Every drum kit sold in the United States under $400 was made outside of the United States. Every single one. That is not a criticism of import manufacturing. It is a supply chain reality that has been true for over 50 years, and it is also the reason this conversation is necessary. The fact that a drum kit is imported tells the buyer almost nothing about whether it is worth buying. Pearl's Export, the best-selling drum kit in the history of the instrument, is imported from Taiwan. Tama's Imperial Star is imported, Mapex's Armory is imported, and 5 other imported drum kits sitting on Amazon and Walmart shelves right now were built to fail, and will fail, and are failing in basements and bedrooms as you read this. What separates the 5 kits on this list from the 3 is not the country of origin. It is the decision each manufacturer made about how much engineering oversight, quality control, and construction integrity to impose on their offshore production. 5 imported drum kits were designed with the minimum of all 3. 3 were built with none of those corners cut. This is the breakdown that separates them. Number 5 on the list of imported drum kits built to fail is the Mendini by Cecilio Adult 5-piece drum set. Mendini is a brand under Cecilio Musical Instruments, incorporated in California, which manufactures its products at overseas facilities and markets them through Amazon, Walmart, and general merchandise online retailers. The Mendini Adult Kit retails between $250 and $400. The shells are poplar wrapped in PVC, polyvinyl chloride wrap rather than the wood grap or lacquer finish used by established drum manufacturers. PVC wrap, applied over poplar at the lowest viable manufacturing cost, does not constitute a finished drum shell. It constitutes a drum shape with a surface treatment. Amazon buyer Q&A on the Mendini drum kit includes a documented response from an experienced drummer asking whether the shells, bearing edges, and lug hardware could hold a quality head replacement. And the answer was that while standard head sizes might fit, the quality of the shells, bearing edges, and lug hardware might make the effort not worth the expense. That answer is the complete verdict on the Mendini's construction. When the most optimistic assessment of the instrument is that upgrading its components might not justify the cost, the instrument does not justify its price. The kick pedal is documented across multiple buyer accounts as having insufficient recoil. The beater returns too slowly, which makes consistent bass drum technique development impossible, and which builds incorrect foot muscle memory into a developing player before they have the frame of reference to know what correct technique feels like. Mendini maintains no documented professional artist endorsements in the drum category. The company's own website acknowledges that its instruments may not have the refined sound of professional models. This is the most accurate statement in Mendini's marketing. The company has also been noted for advertising drum lessons bundled with purchase that buyers report never receiving, a customer service failure that compounds a construction failure. Number 4 is Pulse Drums. Pulse is a brand that emerged in the 1990s producing entry-level drum kits manufactured in China for distribution through mass-market retail channels. It has no dedicated drum manufacturing facility, no proprietary shell technology, and no documented investment in the bearing edge, lug, or hardware specifications that determine whether a drum kit performs to a professional standard or fails under regular use. Drum Helper, a publication with documented professional drumming credentials, describes Pulse drums and hardware as cheap, poorly built, and inexpensive, and notes directly that the author used a Pulse hi-hat stand at a live gig that literally broke during the performance. A hi-hat stand that fails during a performance is not a quality compromise. It is a structural failure. The hi-hat stand is a weight-bearing piece of hardware that must support a cymbal pair and respond to repeated foot pressure at any tempo a drummer plays. It cannot fail. Pulse built one that did. Pick My Drum Set describes Pulse as a poor-quality, retail box store, import not worth looking at, and classifies it alongside Mendini as a product category rather than a brand. Undifferentiated OEM Chinese manufacturer with a label attached and a price point set to capture the buyer who doesn't know what else to look for. The shells are poplar. The hardware is single-braced, which means each stand, cymbal arm, and snare holder uses a single tube of metal rather than the interlocking double-brace construction that prevents swaying and collapse under impact. The cymbals are brass. The heads are disposable by design. Drum chat accounts from long-term users describe stock heads developing holes within weeks of regular use, not months. Pulse has no professional representation, no artist endorsement history, and no documented presence in any serious drumming context at any skill level. It is a price point with a name stamped on it. Number 3 is CB Percussion. CB Percussion, originally distributed by International Music Corporation is one of the original mass-market Chinese import drum brands, brought to the American market through general merchandise and entry-level music retailer channels starting in the 1970s and 1980s. It is one of the few import brands old enough to have accumulated a multi-decade record of buyer experience, and that record is remarkably consistent. Zsounds hosts multiple verified buyer reviews of the CB5 5-piece kit, and the documented pattern never changes. The drums themselves are functional for a basic practice context, and the shells produce a workable sound with upgraded heads. Everything that surrounds the shells falls apart. The cymbals are described in multiple reviews as sounding like trash can lids, a phrase that appears independently across multiple platforms and reviewers, with no coordination required because the description is simply accurate. The hi-hat stand is documented as having a spring too weak to properly support heavier hi-hat cymbals, making it unstable under normal closed hi-hat play. The bass pedal requires immediate replacement if the player has any intention of developing real foot technique, a damning verdict for a complete kit that is supposed to include everything a beginner needs. Drumhelper lists CB Percussion among the brands to avoid alongside Mendini and Pulse, describing the collective as manufacturers of low-quality drum sets with inferior sounds and a lack of refinement across all areas of design and construction. A professional musician on Zsounds with 15 years of composing experience described the CB JRX55 Junior kit as an excellent choice for very young children, and called out clearly that no professional drummer would ever be seen behind a set of CB drums. The DFO community's consistent advice upon any mention of CB was a redirect to a used Pearl export or used Yamaha at a comparable price. That advice remains correct. CB Percussion was designed to fill a shelf at a price point. That is what it does. It was not designed to be a musical instrument. Number 2 is Gammon. Gammon distributes its 5-piece adult drum kits primarily through Walmart and Amazon at prices ranging from $200 to $300. The Gammon kit is a product of Chinese OEM manufacturing, a production model in which a factory assembles drums to a generic specification shared across multiple brand names, applies whichever label the distributor requests, and ships the result with no proprietary engineering input from the brand that puts its name on the box. Drum Gear Guru documents this explicitly. Some of these brands might even make their kits in the same factories as each other, and just change the labels. Drum Gear Guru's review of the Gammon Adult Kit documents the most fundamental structural failure of the line: the bearing edges, the contact points between the drum shell and the drum head, which determine how well a drum tunes and how long it holds pitch, were not a thought during this kit's production. A bearing edge that was not a thought is not a bearing edge. It is a shell edge that happens to exist. Gearank, which tracked the Gammon kit against competing options at the same price, stopped recommending it in March 2018 because its ratings had declined, and multiple better quality alternatives existed at the same price point. The hi-hat clutch fails under regular use. The tension rods do not hold pitch between sessions. The throne is documented in verified buyer counts as bending under normal adult body weight. DrumSpy notes that kits of this construction standard suffer from loosening glue at the bearing edge and wraps that separate from the shell over time. Gammon's business model is the OEM import model at its most stripped down. No engineering input, no quality oversight, no professional context, and no accountability when the instrument fails. Number 1 is Ashthorpe. Ashthorpe is a relatively new instrument distribution company that offers entry-level gear across multiple instrument categories: strings, brass, percussion, keyboards, without appearing to specialize deeply in any of them. The adult 5-piece complete Ashthorpe drum set retails at approximately $400 and includes poplar shells, brass cymbals, triple-flanged hoops as chrome hardware, and Remo UT series heads. The Remo head specification being the one genuine upgrade specification in the kit, and the one component Ashthorpe did not design or manufacture. Music Scanner's review of the Ashthorpe line is measured but unambiguous. The quality is objectively going to be lower than the premium manufacturers due to the materials used and expertise these big names have developed over the years. Best Views Reviews aggregated buyer data for the Ashthorpe 5-piece Junior kit includes documented cases of tom rims arriving with openings that made tuning impossible, holes that should be there but were not drilled, which is the same category of manufacturing failure documented in the Best Choice Products adult drum kit. Bass drum rims warped on one side. One buyer described the snare as sounding terrible, tinny, and cheap, a verdict that cannot be addressed by tuning and cannot be corrected by replacing the head, because the shell producing that sound is the problem. At $400, the Ashthorpe Adult Kit competes directly with the Tama Imperial Star Complete Kit, an instrument that ships with the Iron Cobra HP200P kick pedal, Stagmaster double-braced hardware, 6-ply poplar shells with precision-cut bearing edges, Meinl HCS cymbals, and a pedigree from one of the most respected drum manufacturers in the world. The Ashthorpe exists at $400 because the market supports a product that looks like a drum kit at that price. The Tama Imperial Star exists at the same price because Tama engineered one. That distinction is the entire argument. Now, the 3 imported drum kits that are worth the money. The distinction that separates these 3 from the 5 is a single factor. The company whose name is on the shell made a documented, verifiable, ongoing investment in the engineering and quality control of the production facility that built it. The country of manufacture is irrelevant. The decades of institutional knowledge and accountability behind the import are everything. Number 1 is the Pearl Export EXX. The Export EXX is manufactured in Taiwan. Pearl is a Japanese company founded in 1950 that has been manufacturing drums in Taiwan for decades and has, in that time, built the production infrastructure and quality control protocols that the 5 kits above do not possess and have never attempted to develop. Pearl's own documentation states that all export shells are tested for flatness and roundness before drilling and assembly, a quality control checkpoint applied to every single shell before it becomes a drum. That sentence represents an engineering commitment that Mendini, Pulse, CB, Gammon, and Ashthorpe do not make and could not make because none of them have the manufacturing infrastructure required to make it. The SST manufacturing process uses the world's first high-temperature hydraulic curing system, over 1,000 pounds of hydraulic pressure applied to each shell, producing a construction so structurally sound that Pearl marketed it by demonstrating a Hummer truck supported on a set of export shells. The shells are a 6-ply, 7.5mm blend of Asian mahogany and white poplar, scarf-jointed at the seam, a construction detail that eliminates the tonal dead spot at the seam that lesser kits using butt joints cannot avoid. Pearl shipped 1 million export units by 1995. Music Radar described the export's arrival in 1982 as changing forever the drum kit market and setting a new benchmark that every other manufacturer immediately tried to meet. Drum Spy's Nick Cesars describes the export as the kit that spawned 1,000 drumming legends. 4 decades of documented professional and semi-professional use later, the benchmark holds. The 5 brands on this list's avoid side have not produced a single instrument that anyone plays for 4 decades. Pearl has produced several. Number 2 is the Mapex Armory. The Armory is manufactured in Taiwan. Mapex is a Taiwan-founded drum company that has spent over 30 years developing its own proprietary engineering for shells, bearing edges, and hardware, and applying that engineering to every production run through documented quality oversight. The Armory shells are a 7-ply Birchma-Birch hybrid hunk construction with Sonaclear bearing edges, Mapex's proprietary bearing edge geometry that ensures drum heads seat flat against the edge rather than rocking on a conventional contact point. This bearing edge profile is not borrowed from another product line and filtered down. It originates in the Armory series and scales up into the Saturn IV line. Drum Helper's hands-on review of the Armory describes the bearing edges as really well cut and the build quality overall as excellent. Kickstart Your Drumming's review confirms the same finding. The bearing edges are precisely cut and represent a quality standard above what any competing kit at the same price delivers. Mapex's own manufacturing documentation discloses a 72-hour humidity-controlled curing process for shells before sanding and finishing, a process duration that generic OEM factories operating without climate-controlled environments cannot replicate. The Tomahawk steel snare drum, included with every Armory kit, retails as a standalone product at approximately $150. It features professional 2.3mm triple-flanged hoops, a sturdy throw-off, and 20-strand chrome snare wires. The Sonaclear suspension system on the rack toms is the same system used in Mapex's Saturn IV series, a professional production line that costs 3 times as much. Drum Helper described it as one of the most significant value propositions in the mid-range drum market. That description is accurate and verifiable through a spec sheet comparison and every other kit in its price bracket. Number 3 is the Tama Imperial Star. The Imperial Star is manufactured at Tama overseen production facilities in Taiwan. Tama, the drum division of Hoshinogaki, founded in 1962, has developed its manufacturing oversight model over 6 decades, and the Imperial Star reflects that oversight at every component level. The complete kit retails at approximately $800 to $950. The shells are 6-ply poplar with precision cut-bearing edges and drum wrap that is glued 360 degrees around the shell, a full circumference bond that prevents buzzing and separation over time. Compare that construction decision directly to Mendini's PVC-wrapped shells and Gammon's wraps that separate from the shell over time. The difference is not material, it is commitment. Tama chose to fully bond the wrap because they understood that a partially bonded wrap produces a rattling, unstable shell. Every brand on the avoid list made the cheaper choice. The Stagemaster hardware throughout the kit is double-braced, the same interlocking dual-tube construction that makes professional hardware stable under heavy use, and that is absent from every single braced stand Paulson CB shipped for 30 years. The included cymbal package is Meinel HCS, a brass line, but a fully functional one from a real cymbal manufacturer with documented production standards and a 2-year warranty. And then there is the kick pedal. Tama bundles the Iron Cobra HP2P with the Imperial Star. The HP200P uses the same engineering principles as Tama's Iron Cobra 900 series, a standalone professional pedal that sells independently for close to $200. No import kit from Mendini, Pulse, CB, Gammon, or Ashthorpe ships with a professional tier kick pedal because none of them have the engineering relationship with a professional hardware division that Tama does. Stuart Copeland, the drummer of The Police, played an Imperial Star when Tama first introduced the line. That association was not paid. It was earned by the construction. It still is. The import origin of a drum kit is not the variable that determines whether it is worth buying. Pearl, Yamaha, Tama, Mapex, the most respected drum companies in the world, all manufacture the vast majority of their products outside of Japan and outside of the United States. The variable is the institutional decision behind the import. Whether the company has the engineering history, the quality control infrastructure, the manufacturing oversight, and the professional accountability to make its production standards means something at every unit, not just at the review sample. Mendini attached a California address to an overseas assembly operation with no quality control checkpoint between the factory floor and the buyer's door. Pulse built hardware that breaks during live performances. CB Percussion shipped an instrument category that the community has unanimously redirected buyers away from for 30 years. Gammon sourced from OEM factories with no engineering input, no bearing edge consideration, and no accountability when the instrument fails. Ashthorpe distributed kits that arrived with warped rims and shells that could not be tuned because holes were never drilled. Pearl tested every shell for roundness before drilling it. Mapex imposed a 72-hour curing process on every shell before finishing it. Tama bundled a $200 professional kick pedal into a kit that retails for $900 because the company that makes the Iron Cobra can afford to include it in a complete package without compromising the construction elsewhere. That is the difference. Read the company history, not the country stamp. The import origin is a route, the engineering behind it is the destination.